Hello and welcome everyone back to Bortnik's YouTube channel. My name is James Talberg and I'm again excited to be here with my colleagues Ruslan Bortnik and Marina Cherenkova. Guys, thank you so much for joining today.
Hello, James. Nice to meet you again.
We have
Thank you, James.
We have a couple of statements that I want to discuss, and I'm just going to read out a couple of official statements from the White House and the CIA Director John Ratcliffe. So, Trump administration official confirmed Wednesday that the White House paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine in its war against Russia as part of the broader review of assistance to Kyiv. Moreover, CIA Director John Ratcliffe and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz both said the U.S. had paused intelligence sharing in addition to military aid. So it's not just the military aid, we're also seeing a pause in the intelligence information. While critics argued those moves would severely hamper Ukraine's ability to fend off invading Russian forces, both Trump officials expressed optimism that negotiation would resume shortly with Ukraine on a path to ending the war. Waltz told reporters that we have taken a step back and are pausing and reviewing all aspects of this relationship. Ratcliffe, speaking on Mornings with Maria on Fox Business Network, said that Trump administration pause was intended to make Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky rethink whether he was interested in engaging in peace talks to end the war. On top of that, Ratcliffe suggested Zelensky conciliatory message Monday in which he said Ukrainians wanted peace and were ready to sign a minerals deal with the US, showed the approach was effective. I think on the military front and on the intelligence front, the pause that allowed that to happen, I think will go away. And I think we will work shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine as we have to push back on the aggression that's there but to put the world in a better place for these peace negotiations to move forward, Ratcliffe said. So colleagues, I think what we're seeing here is a little bit of educational process from the White House perspective. How are you perceiving all those statements, and where do we stand right now from the practical perspective in terms of the war and in terms of the relationship between the White House and Ukraine? Whoever wants to jump in.
Ruslan, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. I'll try to express my attitude to this. Of course, it looks like a lesson, special lesson for Zelensky after that scandal in Oval Room in White House in last Friday, as I remember. It happened February 29, as I remember. And after this, it looks like the Trump administration, not only oral but also in practical attitude, is changing its approach toward Ukraine and toward Ukrainian government. And of course, if we are talking about the intelligence sharing, about the military support, we don't need to remember to forget about the also stopped humanitarian support because of stopping of USAID working in Ukraine. Also, it's very complex attitude toward Ukraine, and all this situation make the ability of Ukrainian government shorter. Make the all this situation makes the general situation in Ukraine worse, like it was before. But the question is that Ukraine still has a lot of previous equipment which was sent to Ukraine in previous time during the Biden administration, and the result of such an influence on Ukraine will not be very fast. There are different estimations on the significant results for Ukrainian defense, for the war, for internal situation in Ukraine, about this stopping of this or freezing this support. But the average estimation says that between 2 till 9 months, Ukraine still will be capable to continue the fight and continue and keep the internal balance inside of Ukrainian society in economical and political terms. Moreover, I think it looks like that Zelensky tried to bring apologizes to the Trump administration exactly before Trump's statement in the Congress, few hours before, and it looks like that these apologizes were not accepted or were accepted very suspicious. From one side, the Trump and few members of his team said that we heard that apologizes. It's very good direction. But in another hand, we see in practical way, United States continues influence, continues pushing Zelensky.
Marina, how was that apology received in terms of the American society?
Thank you, James. I just would like to elaborate a bit on Ruslan's points. Just would like to remind that this is not the first time that USA has withheld military aid. We should remember that Republicans in Congress blocked then President Joe Biden's largest tranche of military assistance for Ukraine in the summer of 2023. And so Ukraine already experienced to the pauses of military and financial help as well. That's why I would not treat that as a catastrophe, not at least for the next 4/6 months. It's too early.
Marina, but can I make a point here? I think what's different this time is that they're also pausing the intelligence information. I'm assuming that, in regards of like what they can see from the space, etc., 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 that can also severely impact the Ukrainian forces. Is that different this time, or that was also paused previously?
That is different this time, but if we are talking about Starlink and about ability to continue military actions on Russian Federation territory, it's the same. Nothing has changed. However, from my perspective, to put on pause means to demonstrate that Trump's administration is going towards peace, towards negotiations, and towards new policy, global policy. That's why I believe we should not be in illusion that it is a temporary. We should not have false hopes. We have to accept the reality, and the reality is going to be very tough. Big countries are going to impose the new rules on all of us. I mean, that is the reality. And yesterday's Congress speech of the President of United States is just outlined everything we've discussed before. By the way, I would like to remind ourselves that in our previous discussions, when we try to analyze previous attempts for peacemaking from the European side and from American side, we were absolutely right that America chooses absolutely different approach, because the European peacemaking deals at this point do not look very successful. They're very long. It takes ages for any conversations, roadmaps. It's not a deal process like America offers now. So we are going to face absolutely different, very aggressive, new political narratives, actions, and deal. And we have to manage our expectations in that fair.
So based on what you're saying, it looks like Zelensky could have realized that Europe doesn't have a practical exit strategy plan, so he decided to pivot and make an apology to Trump and to the United States. Why that apology wasn't received well, and why don't we see practical steps in terms of resuming the financial and the military aid to Ukraine, or the apology wasn't enough?
No, I think apology was accepted, but the problem is with the new rules. You can say as many beautiful words as you would like to, but Americans now want facts, actions, proofs. Diplomacy is about words, and they are towards the real politics. That's my understanding. That's why it's still on hold. That's why it's still paused.
So if it is still on hold, it's still on pause, it's not like fully shut down. What's the process that Ukraine and the United States have to go through to renew that help, to renew that assistance, and to renew that relationship? And what should be the end goal of that new, renewed relationship between Ukraine and the United States?
Is it a question for me,
James? Yeah, I'm still continuing the conversation with you. Yeah.
Right. First of all, we have to ask ourselves whether if we are moving towards peace, I mean, ourselves as Americans, why we would continue military help, why we would not provide some other humanitarian assistance or financial assistance to the government structures of Ukraine. That's the question I would ask myself, right? If we are almost in peace talks, and it looks like at least Americans and Russians are totally involved in negotiations about Ukraine. So I don't know what at this stage could be offered to American administration, Trump's administration, because those people are from private sector. Majority of those people are old school people in the positive sense. They want very clear actual evidences that they were heard until actions would not demonstrate that everything from the Ukrainian side was accepted and almost in the process of implementation. I would not anticipate any warm tendencies between two countries. I personally would not. And I mean, it is sad. It is absolutely sad. And I've read a lot of articles and reactions of very famous people, great journalists, who surprised me again with the words, it's not fair, it is not justice, the president of Ukraine was betrayed. And I mean, we've discussed that with you, James. In politics, there are no words like fair, justice, or to be betrayed. That is something different. And with this administration, we understand that probably we should be much more realistic than even before.
I think I'm not surprised with the statements with unfair and unjust and betrayal. I was kind of expecting these comments to come up with. I am surprised, though, with this whole process. How do they get to those points, right? I mean, Ukraine for the past 3 years was receiving a whole lot of help unconditionally. A lot of military aid, a lot of financial aid, a lot of humanitarian aid unconditionally. We have seen, again, those are not facts because I don't have any insider information, but we have seen a lot of corruption case in Ukraine in regards to that military aid, humanitarian aid, financial aid. Why would Ukrainians and the rest of the world expect at some point the person who's providing that help or the country that provides them that help at some point not to come up with a logical conclusion? Hey, we want an audit. We gave you a lot of money. We gave you a lot of help. We just want to figure out what's happening here, because it seems to us that all that money didn't always go to the needs that it was given. So I'm just surprised. Why is it stated as a betrayal and not a logical outcome out of a situation where Ukraine is just doing whatever they think they need to do, whatever they want to do in their reality, but they're not considering an opinion from the country, from the allies that it's coming from. So that's what confuses me here more, not the fact that they're calling it betrayal. That's something that I would assume would come out to make it sound dramatic, but I just don't see it dramatic because this is just logical. If you're helping somebody, if you're giving somebody money unconditionally, etc., and at some point that person is not doing what you expect that person will do with that money, you will have questions, or you will just decide to slow down with that help. Isn't that what happened?
No, I don't think so. I'm sorry. Just let me react on corruption. Corruption is something which cannot be which you cannot do corruption only in Ukraine if other partners are not involved. And I'm absolutely objective, James, but please understand me. Yes, that was American money. It is very vividly verbalized in the United States that Ukraine is a laundry, basically, and corruption, full of corruption. But at the end of the day, what would not be realistic from American perspective to expect that Americans who were involved, or American companies which were involved, are absolutely clean and to blame only Ukrainians. It is not just possible. It doesn't work like that. As President Trump says, you need two for tango. So I will just use the same analogy or comparison. That's the first stuff. The second is now I believe that is a political narrative to blame Biden's administration in all possible things. That's why it is so, it's so often when Trump's administration representatives are talking about corruption and about audit, but do we have any specific actions toward audit of the United States help in Ukraine? I don't remember that. So
why don't we have one?
I have no slightest idea. Maybe from my perspective, because that's a politics, that is a narratives which should push Ukrainians toward the decisions which White House wants from Ukrainians now. Because look, you cannot discuss corruption in Ukraine for almost 1 year and do nothing. I mean, James, it doesn't take a lot of time to send to Ukrainians a proper audit team and to start doing digging or drilling. So I was not prepared for the discussion about corruption, but that's my initial reaction. What do you think, Ukraine? What do you think, Ruslan? Because from your perspective, you are in Ukraine now.
I think it's a formal rhetoric, colleagues, because there is no place in the world without corruption, and there were not any, there was not any war, there is not any war, there will not be any war in the world without corruption. Any war is always about corruption, about wasting a lot of money in inappropriate way. I think it's a formal rhetoric, and I want to remind you that there were special inspectors from United States which were worked on the Ukrainian audit during the Biden's administration, but of course they haven't found anything bad on Ukraine. Also, I want to remind you that the Trump's team, as I remember, the new head of FBI also called the necessity on the audit on Ukrainian expenditures. But I think it's only a formal approach, because in the core of this approach, I think there is just a very business attitude toward Ukraine, very business. What I'm talking about, just imagine if you have some kind of enterprise and you are financing this enterprise during the 3 years for a huge money, and you are not achieving any beneficials from it. You're not earning money, you have nothing from this, and this enterprise still asks more and more money. So
it creates additional problems for you.
Yeah, and of course, in the same moment, you are thinking over about it and just making decision to stop it, to stop working, to make to bring your money to another place, to another ideas, for another goals. And it's a very commercial approach from the Trump's administration toward Ukraine. And James, you said about why people expressing such feelings like betrayed and so on and so on. It happens every time when the propaganda is entering, propaganda world is clashing with the real world. And of course, if you are saying for people, for Ukrainian people, for many years, that you are fighting for the God, you are fighting for the best in the world, you are fighting for the freedom, from the justice, for everything the best which the human civilization has. And if in the end you see the situation like in the White House, you see such a strong demands from the United States governments, and of course such people, Ukrainian people, which were betrayed, but not in Oval Room. They were betrayed during the propaganda times, and when they are facing such a demands and dialogue, of course they are feeling very disoriented and very shocked. It because we don't in Ukraine we don't have and we didn't have a wide society dialogue about the future of Ukraine, about the continuation of the war. For of course, war is very hard time, but I want to remind the Israeli experience. They had also very hard war, but at the same time they had political competition, they had independent mass media, and so their society was much more informed and was much more ready to the ceasefire, to the ending of the war, and so on and so on. In Ukrainian society is in a quite other situation, and Ukrainian society just is trying to rise the head over these waves of propaganda which was covered us during the last years.
And what do you expect in terms of the next steps from Vladimir Zelensky and Ukraine, the official leaders of Ukraine, if the aid and the help from the United States will continue being on pause and the apology wasn't enough? What do you think, what next steps they can take to renew that relationship?
I think the Ukraine will, with the support of European partners, especially Great Britain and France, will try to last in the time, and will try to change the agenda which Trump is proposing now. In the final count, I think Trump demands from Zelensky make three signs now. To make a signs under the document on ceasefire, to make the signs under the document of mineral deal, and to make the signs under the document of under the order to Ukrainian militaries to stop the war and to decline the previous order which prohibited the negotiation with Russia. Only these signs, it looks like for me, demands Trump's administration, and these signs will be real steps which will be evaluated from the United States, and standing on this evaluation, the United States will make additional decisions on Ukraine. Ukraine is trying to play another game. Ukraine is trying to use this French idea of gradual ceasefire. You remember, let's make a ceasefire on the sea, let's make the ceasefire on the energy infrastructure, on the civilian infrastructure, and so on. Ukraine is trying to use these ideas of gradual ceasefire and to bring them to the White House and to propose like a preliminary conditions to the agreement, general agreement of ceasefire. Russia will be strictly against it. Because Russia has an advantage in air, in rockets and so on. Russia has advantage in the captured Ukrainian militaries, so Russia is not ready to change all people for all people, and many such cases which was elaborately chosen by Ukrainian side to make a situation when Russia will decline any peaceful propositions from Trump's administration. So this game is going on. It's not ending. This game is going on, and White House it clearly understands. So because even taking into account Zelensky apology, White House is not hurry up to make a real steps of unfreezing and helping Ukraine and so on.
How is Marina? I want to go back to the situation with a paused aid. At the beginning of the war, we've seen a lot of support from the American people helping Ukraine to withstand that occupation from the Russian side. How is the average American reacting now to everything that Trump's administration is doing? Are they supporting Trump's position in regards to stopping the aid and pushing for negotiations?
The society in the United States is divided exactly in the same proportion as it was divided during the last presidential elections. However, people are tired of wars, and Americans would like to pay much more attention to themselves. They were absolutely shocked by the news of federal agency corruption. And we've been through the USAID stories, and yesterday it was announced some very sad stories from the federal employees of the United States. Average American person is processing that huge amount of information. And I'm sorry, it's sad to say, but Ukraine is not a priority. And it was never a priority among average Americans. It was sympathy, empathy, and desire to help during the first months of the war. But then, that's a natural reaction of any society.
Human beings, yeah.
Yeah. However, the bad thing about wars that people get used to them as well. And that is extremely dangerous stuff, because if you do live inside of this war, as Ruslan does, your life is absolutely a pure drama and tragedy every day, every second, and every hour. But for the rest of the world, and especially for Americans, it's somewhere very, very far, and it is not our strategic interests, goals, or ally. So it's something which is not a priority anymore.
Alex, we have covered that update topic for now. Is there anything else that you would like to add on to that?
I have only a short word about Ukrainian-United States relations. I'm sure that this relation will continue, because United States still interested in Ukrainian mineral deal and still interested in some kind of informal influence presence in Ukraine, because Ukraine is a geopolitical bridge, as Kissinger said in his very famous book. And Ukraine is very interested in cooperation with the United States, with continuation of the military help, financial support, or restoration support, and so on, so on. So these interests will push the both sides to the table, to the relations.
To continue the cooperation.
Yeah, so I think it's not fatal for Ukrainian and United States relation, but of course the long-term absence of United States military support and financial support will definitely lead Ukraine to the military defeat in face of Russia. If we are talking about 6 months, 8 months, and longer, it will be more and more crucial for Ukraine.
From my perspective, James, I just would like to say that if we really do care about Ukrainians, if we do want to help them, it's just a right time to start thinking about a proper supporting programs of mental health, humanitarian programs, something which will be useful for average Ukrainian people. Because to live inside of the war within such a horrible attacks for 3 years, it's beyond human beings' strength. That's my perspective. And I would love to see all those demonstrations, protesters from Europe, from United States, and even in Ukrainians living abroad, all of those people should start protesting and advocating for really good, really profound and efficient humanitarian help for our country.
I would also think I think that on top of that, as a foundation, they should break the information bubble. They should bring new news channels, new TV channels, allow vloggers, bloggers, journalists to express a different perspective and different ideas and different solutions, just to break that information bubble, and then they can start discussing everything that you've mentioned before, because those things are important as much as the situation on the front line. Colleagues, thank you so much for all the comments and insights today, and we'll be back with more updates next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.